So for our last demo, I want to bring on Swaroop to talk about PowerLoom. Now, this is a really interesting project because there's a lot of amazing origins here, which we'll dig into for how this got started. And not only that, this is something that matters to all of us, whether we're developers or not, as we kind of use more things on chain. So I won't ruin the surprise. I'll have Swaroop talk about PowerLoom. So without further ado, please welcome Swaroop.
Thanks so much, Karthik. It wasn't so much of a secret. Now that you hyped it up, I'm like a little more nervous now. I thought open sourcing this like a week or like I think a month ago was probably going to be easy, but no. Anyway, my name is Swaroop. I'm one of the co-founders of PowerLoom. I live in Vancouver, a very different side of this country, but it's exciting to be here, especially with its connection to both Ethereum and ETH Global. I don't think I could have picked a better opportunity to showcase what I've been sort of working on with my small team for the last 2.5 years. To give you some sort of context, so I've been in the space since 2017, building developer tools for Ethereum. So we started with a project called ETH. We used to help onboard Web2 developers a very different time. I think we had less than 100,000 devs, and maybe this is probably what the hackathon venue would have looked like. I think it was as well. So, and I think that's what our goal was. We built that for a few years and eventually went on to help the small network called Matic, which you now all know as Polygon. And they grew quite a bit. And this is actually a real graph of when we were running all of the infrastructure in, I think, somewhere around 2021. It was pretty crazy to sort of do something at that scale. But one of the things that we noticed was that a lot of the dApps, the DeFi projects, and pretty much everyone else using on-chain data would pull that data, sort of run it through a lot of third-party services or like some sort of in-house databases and caches and present that to their end users, which sort of beats the whole purpose, right? Why we are in this space. And I like how, I think Karthik earlier asked about what is truly decentralization. So, if you sort of take shortcuts, there's no purpose. And we ourselves were one of the main people, right? Like we were running 90% of that infrastructure and we challenged ourselves, what could we do to change this? And I think it was one of this hack, and Karthik, I just tried to pull this from some really old blog post. It was this Zoom call and maybe a story for another day. But I sort of presented, I don't think it was even PowerLoom at that point. We were just testing out one of the ideas. It was quite the demo. I hope today's demo is not like this. And we ended up testing this prototype that we had, and we ended up then started working on this protocol. So the premise is very simple. The idea behind PowerLoom is to aggregate data from on-chain. This really depends on the use case, how you transform or sort of splice data around. So it could be coming from one contract. It could also be coming across chains. But the end result is sort of a snapshot. And that snapshot is something you don't have to query, right? That's the big difference between everything else that's out there. And what we do is we use cryptographic proofs to maintain the data integrity. And the biggest advantage is because we sort of store this on well-known sort of battle-tested technologies like IPFS and Filecoin, anyone can sort of pull that data instantly and in a really cheap way. And even if, let's say, in a network where there are certain parties that are sort of doing all this computation, any peer in that network should be able to pull that. And I'm hoping I can demo that today. So maybe we'll sort of jump into how to sort of run a PowerLoom node. I've done a really simple one-click setup. Been working on it all night, so hopefully it runs today live. I wish I had recorded the demo like the last speaker. I think that would have been better, but let's try this. And actually, before I jump into that, maybe give you guys an idea of what use case are we working on. So I'm hoping some of you have used Uniswap. We sort of talked a lot about swapping tokens and stuff. So we built this use case, which is similar to, started zooming this in. So when you use Uniswap, the behind the scenes, there's a lot of data that sort of gets stored on chain, right? So which is what people use to make decisions. And then like in this case, like Tally is sort of helping people to sort of protect those swaps from happening for different DAOs. But it's this final data that Uniswap shows on the info page. Now, this is pretty complex now. Even if you sort of try to load this page, you'll notice the time it takes in spite of it actually using a third-party service to pull this data. This is not coming from on-chain. the source is on chain, but the final output is sitting on some, and not to badmouth any particular competitor or a third party, I think they're working towards sort of solving that. So what we have done is we have built this sort of use case on top of our protocol to showcase what we can do. And we're going to try and launch this node. So, okay. So let's head to our, I already have the tab pulled up. So let's head to the main repository. This is our deploy. Everything is open source, so you can actually try this locally on your Docker. But I don't want to bring down the Wi-Fi here. So I'm going to try and deploy this on what GitHub calls Codespaces. The advantage of that is it doesn't matter what kind of computer you have, right? You should be able to deploy this remotely on that instance. But for full decentralization, I would highly recommend that you use Docker and do this locally. Anyway, so let's jump here. I already have one code space running here, so maybe let's try to deploy there. It's got a nice name, fictional guacamole. Okay. Now I'm actually feeling hungry thinking about it. Okay, cool. That actually loaded pretty quick. So let's clear this up. So this essentially runs a lot of different components, which I think maybe there's not enough time today to go in detail. But in terms of inputs, it expects very few things. So you just need to provide an RPC URL, which could be, in the ideal state, run some sort of a light Ethereum node. In this case, I'm just using this free provider to show you how it works. And you would have to probably set up a key, so any sort of a EVM wallet, ideally something that's fresh for our setup. So I've set up one here already, and that's it. I think that should be enough. I think I've hidden the private key downstairs because this is completely gasless. You don't need any gas. We're using sort of a layer 2 to run these transactions using a relayer. So let's actually run the script. So it's a one-click setup, hopefully. Yep, all the images are already pulled. So it's going to run your IPFS node as well, but you can use third parties like Infura and some others. And while this is loading up, let's actually go and check out what it's going to do behind the scenes. So we have this testnet that just went live. It's not fully open to everyone, but you can definitely read. For you to participate, there's a small form that you just need to fill. The only reason we haven't allowed everyone is you can easily bring down the network with a few hundred participants if you just spam it, because there's no gas involved at the moment. But we'll open it up in the coming months for everyone. So as of now, just go to PowerLoom.io and fill in a form and come find me either today or during the hackathon, and I'll give you access right away. So these are all what we call as the fundamental projects. So these are like sort of modular in the senses. So in this case, you can sort of see if it makes sense. Let's try to zoom in and understand what's going on. So for this particular use case, there's a few pairs that we have selected. This is what we are calling it like a light mode, but you can pick and choose depending on data market. And eventually, once we have incentives, then they'll be completely dependent on demand and supply. So this is like a pair contract of a certain pair. So this is similar to what you see here. And these are these pairs that run on Uniswap, right? So we're tracking bits of each data and then combining that into a final snapshot. So what you see here is for each epoch. So what we do is each epoch is essentially linked to this. Let me try to pull this. I actually had a tab open. There we go. Yeah. So it's like a span of block heights right now. So it can be completely dependent on whoever is running the service. But as of now, it's every 10 Ethereum blocks for the sake of just, from a human perspective, it's easier to understand what's really going on. So once an epoch is generated, all the nodes in the network receive that through an EVM smart contract consensus that we have built. And hopefully we'll have something better in our next testnet. And when your node receives that, it does all of this computation and submits snapshot against it. And when they reach consensus, we see this sort of a finalized state. Right? So in this case, we had 4 peers reaching consensus. And so let's see how many come in. So I'm hoping by now our node is up and running. Let's see. Yep, everything is good to go. So let's see, and let's look for this node here, and if it has started submitting. So far it has not submitted anything yet, but if I refresh it, I'm hoping I think the Docker is not able to connect it. But anyway, I'll try to show the final output of what it looks like. So this is what you see when you run your own node. So if you remember, I had this info page pulled up here. So this is what is running currently from a hosted service that Uniswap uses. But in our case, every node has a copy of this. And the way it does is it aggregates all of those small bits of projects and turns it into this final output. And the good thing is all of this is sitting on top of IPFS. So if you actually try to open this through either your IPFS node or through Cloudflare, again, I think it's always with the network might be a bit slow in pulling in. But you can go to the website and you can check this on your phones as well. So you'll be able to verify that exact same snapshot, the CID matches for every node in that network. So when we take all of these projects, we turn it into this one use case. The idea in the future is developers should be able to build whatever they want. So this is just an early showcase of what we've been working on. And let's give it one last try and see if that, there we go. Perfect. Okay. It has finally submitted one, and hopefully that should get finalized in before the next epoch hits. So let's see how many. There we go. We have 3 snapshotters. I think it waits for at least 51%, or it waits for the time window. So at least that worked. That's good. Yeah, that's it. That's how you can launch your PowerLoom node. So you don't need any expensive computers or anything else. And I think that was our goal for the last 2 years. And I'm excited to show this and working, the key point. Awesome. Thank you so much. And please do check it out.
Amazing. Live demos are hard, especially when you're launching a testnet. So it went better than the last time, and maybe it's a good time for you to tell the story here of what that Zoom screenshot actually was and how your backend was perfectly appropriate for.
I think that was the most painful 5 or 10 minutes of my life. I remember I was also stuck in India during COVID at that time. So we were in extreme lockdown in the sense we couldn't go out of our houses. So whatever internet connection I had, probably some middle of the night as well. And it's funny because I think it was Zoom that froze it. And I remember when I bought this computer, that's the first thing. Just Zoom work. Oh yeah, it was actually Apple Pay. I was trying to do this entire demo, again, live, as usual. I think I just enjoy doing live demos. And but we managed to sort of get it to work, and that got a lot of attention. And that's what I tell people, that it doesn't matter. Sometimes even something going bad can have...
No, there's no such thing as bad press, I think. But it's super interesting because we kind of realized in your case, through previous hackathons, what some points of failures are and why these things matter. And given how much we're talking about, let's move everything to on-chain, data integrity matters, data availability matters. And even though your focus was here on the testnet and how easy it is to kind of get started on snapshotting, can you tell to everybody here in the audience what you think the main benefit is of somebody running a PowerLoom node or using this over any alternate data fetching methods?
Yeah, even like we're calling it testnet purely for the consensus aspect of it. The data that I was actually showing, even that final demo that we see, it's actually live. That data can be verified. The only thing is because there's no incentive, that's why we call things as testnet. I think there was a gentleman earlier today when Jacob and I were there, he asked, what is a DApp? And I realized, because he was trying to say, what are you going to present? And I thought, nothing matters. I need to go back to the basics, right? So these are all like nice words. But in terms of when you explain it to a person who may not come from our space, the key element is that even the sort of transformed data, right? So we have this on-chain data, which is expensive. We talked about it. I think you covered it in the earlier conversations with CryptoKitties and Flow. We cannot be storing this final data again on it, right? And at the same time, if we store it on IPFS, who watches the watcher, right? Like that's been it's one of my favorite.
Turtles all the way down.
Yeah. And I think that's what we've been trying to solve. As of today, I'm not saying it's perfect, but what we have managed to ship so far and what I managed to still demo is ensures that whatever that use case is, so in this case, it was just Uniswap data, but it doesn't matter, right? It could come from SushiSwap, or it could even come from cross-chain. So the final data is one, the hash doesn't change because thanks to math, actually, that's all there is, right? There's just a hash of that JSON or text file. And what ensures the integrity is when you have more and more peers in the network. So that's what we focused on, making sure it's so cheap that anyone can run this system. That just solidifies the integrity of that data.
So when should somebody be using this over like the graph or something else?
That is one question.
Which is more like a real-time querying of that same on-chain information?
Right. I think we do have a slightly different approach to, and I don't want to just pick on the graph. They've been my customers, and I think they were the reason how I sort of got thinking like, hey, this needs to be solved in a better way. Theirs is more query-driven, right? You're still indexing the data, and if I'm not wrong, at least it used to be stored on a Postgres sort of a database. But with us, there's no such thing. The final data is already computed. So even you can serve that data tomorrow without having to sort of query some sort of a centralized database. Because the problem is, even if you index in a consensus, you still are trusting one peer to return the result of that query in the right way, right? So that's something that's not a challenge with us, but that's also a bit of a drawback because it's expensive for us to pre-compute everything.
And sometimes latency trade-offs?
Latency in pre-compute only. Post-process, ours is instantly available. That's the good thing because it's actually very quick. So you can refresh the page and get that in. It's when you sort of try to do any complex querying and you haven't thought of that use case before, then the nodes have to go and try to calculate that and reach some sort of at least one epoch consensus.
So I guess one of my questions here is like, we kind of saw this thing, we understand how this is different than a querying language, but what kind of new applications does this enable, or what exactly is now possible that wasn't easy or possible before?
I think at least when I first sort of got into the space, and even before we got building all those RPCs, we didn't even have a reliable storage network. There was IPFS, but it was more like a hobby project. And I think that's why that connection to HackFS and the Filecoin team is so special, because I believe they went mainnet just a month or two after that Zoom call of ours. So that ensures that we have. So here's the thing, right? We are also not reinventing any. Like, we're not trying to run our own chain. We're actually using EVM stuff and all of these existing technologies. So the good thing is we are leveraging what's already out there. So we don't need a new set of people to run new infrastructure. Filecoin miners can run this. Ethereum proof of stake, like I myself run a node as well, so I could run this as well. The only difference would be is because it depends on if there are more and more use cases, there would be more demand for someone to run dedicated infrastructure to run that transforming of the data in between. And I think that's made it easy for us because we don't have to reinvent anything for our use case.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the launch today. And it looks like people who are interested in computing data or pre-computing data and putting it on chain for the hackathon or moving forward, come find Swaroop in the audience today or anytime this weekend and use some free data key value store as a service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Congratulations.